Thank you, everyone, on behalf of the Nonprofit Management Program at Columbia University in the School of Professional Studies. It's great to have you here this evening for the third out of 3 sessions on cryptocurrency and the nonprofit sector. Tonight's focus will be on new opportunities and new challenges. Please know tonight's session is being recorded, as you likely saw, and we'll be using the Q&A feature in Zoom for any questions that you have throughout the session. So please do submit any questions using that functionality. For those that I don't know, my name is Leah Heister-Burton. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer and Deputy Director at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum and Foundation, and also adjunct faculty within the Nonprofit Management Program. Tonight's session is going to be looking at the future of crypto philanthropy, highlighting recent performance impacting donor use and organizations accepting the vehicle, other trends we should be aware of into the future, insights on donor interests, giving considerations, and so on. And I'm so delighted to be joined by Lisa Zola-Greer, philanthropist, entrepreneur, convener, and author of Philanthropy Revolution, as well as Mark Ulrich, co-founder and CEO of Every.org. Despite significant volatility and scrutiny over its 13-plus-year history, cryptocurrency has become a recent philanthropic and financial phenomenon, so to speak. It saw its height, as we know, in fall of 2021, and adoption by a variety of users, with key markets on the West, East Coast, all around the world leading the way, despite a history of unpredictability. So tonight we're going to dig in to what do these trends mean for the charitable sector, and how are charitably inclined investors approaching crypto donations and otherwise. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to talk us through her perspective. Lisa, over to you.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And thank you to everybody who was involved in putting this on. It's very exciting. I don't think there's a lot of seminars like this. In fact, I don't even know if there's any, and it's an issue, especially with the volatility and things that have happened in this market in the last month. I think it's something that we all need to discuss. So thank you all for being here. I am a donor. I'm a major donor who didn't grow up with the word philanthropist being part of my our language in our home. Very middle-class family that one day about 10, 11 years ago, I sold my company and my husband's company at the same time went public, and we became part of the 1%, as they say, the nice 1%, of course. But yeah. And anyway, and we had to learn about philanthropy and coming at it from business, where both of us came at this from being in business. We were let's say appalled, I guess is the nicest word, by what we encountered and by the sort of arcane ways that a lot of this industry was done. And nowhere is that as obvious, I think, as it is when you start talking about cryptocurrency, because when I've got a situation now where, and I basically have spent the last several years writing and teaching nonprofits and other donors about this industry and how to make it better, because there's definitely some issues with it. But starting off with the reticence to really accept, but they're still talking about bring back a check. And bring back a check is like, if you get a chance to see my book, you'll see there's a section in it where I was told by somebody about 5 years ago at a big event that they couldn't make the ability to have people use credit cards active at this particular event because most people were going to be bringing their checkbooks. And I don't know about any of you on this call, but I'm guessing that most of you will agree that we haven't brought our checkbooks for a long time, especially just as a default to an event. So going from that to cryptocurrency is a huge leap. And I'm very, very excited that Mark is on this presentation with me, because his company has actually done some work with this that I think is really, really obvious, but yet isn't being done, which is creating a very simple and very intelligent, but simple way of a frictionless way of accepting cryptocurrency and accepting other things too beyond the check. So that's really what I wanted to kind of talk about, is a little bit about how this industry, it continues to be very arcane and actually not terribly willing to change. So getting from check to credit card to donor advised fund to appreciate securities to cryptocurrency is feels like a long way, and it really shouldn't be. So that's my story, and I'm here to help from that perspective.
Thank you, Lisa. And with that wonderful introduction, I'm happy to share a little bit more about myself and about every.org. So we launched every.org just a little over 2 years ago in March of 2020, very beginning of the pandemic. And unlike some .org websites that you'll hear about, we are a true nonprofit ourselves, a 501c3. And before that, I was a machine learning engineer at Pinterest and then C3.ai. And found once I, again, had more wealth of my own to give, that the donation mechanisms were often a bit antiquated, like Lisa was saying. And so really created every.org in order to ensure that every single nonprofit could fundraise to the best of their abilities. Because what I saw was organizations doing fantastic work in their community, focused on innovative research or early childhood education, fighting for racial justice, that were all at very different levels in terms of their fundraising capacity and fundraising tools and technology. And so every.org exists as a nonprofit to kind of bring everyone up to the best possible level. And we actually launched without cryptocurrency, but very soon saw that there was a lot of demand from donors. And the reason that donors want it is because they can donate more if they donate a highly appreciated asset. It works just like donating stocks or anything else, where if you donate something that has appreciated a huge amount, let's say you have $10,000 to donate. If you donate that appreciated asset directly, then the nonprofit can get the full $10,000 and you can get the full tax deduction. If you instead sell it yourself for US dollars, you're going to have to pay a bunch of taxes, and there might only be, say, $4,000 left over for the nonprofit. So people want to give more, and that means giving the appreciated asset directly. However, nonprofits don't want to deal with all of the regulatory uncertainty of cryptocurrency, and there's a lot of bad things going on, which hopefully we'll dive into later during this panel. But so what we ended up doing is, because every.org is a nonprofit ourselves, we can accept the cryptocurrency, sell it ourselves, and then send a US dollar grant onto the nonprofit. So then we're responsible for all of the know your customer, all of the anti-money laundering, all of the tax filing with regulators, making sure that our accounting are booking things correctly. Is cryptocurrency a commodity? Is it a security? Is it property? It might depend on which regulatory agency you ask. And so we're keeping up to date on the latest with that. And then ensuring that nonprofits get a very simple US dollar grant. So I can share a little bit more about what that looks like today. This is every.org/nonprofits. We're funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, camp.org, expo.org. And because of that, it's free for our nonprofit clients, and we offer the most donation methods possible. And a very popular one has been cryptocurrency. In fact, if you look at our total impact, the money that we've raised for nonprofits since launching, it's over $18 million. And the most popular source of donations has actually been cryptocurrency. And that's because a lot of large nonprofits are using us as an intermediary so that they don't have to go to their board and update their gift acceptance policy. They don't have to figure out if they want to hold it or sell it. We're the ones that are selling it and sending them US dollars. So here's an example of how Marietta College does it. They just have a very simple, hey, we're accepting crypto. You can click here to donate. Here's an example of how MAPS does it. They have a nice more ways to give section. And one of those is, of course, donate with cryptocurrency. If you click that, it will bring you to every.org to make that donation. Here's how the US Council on Foreign Relations does it. They have their donate now for cash, their donate crypto. So everyone's doing it a little bit differently. And I think these are all totally valid ways. We are kind of working on a new version, which I'll show you on our own website, where we make crypto kind of one of many options. So these are basically sorted in order of their popularity, where we see that most people are using credit card donations. Second most popular in terms of number of donations is bank, then PayPal, then cryptocurrency, then stocks, then using a donor advised fund. And I think Lisa had some great insights on kind of why you want to have an interface like this and meet donors kind of where they're at.
Right. So, Leah, are you okay if I chime? I guess so. I guess I
Please
should.
go ahead, Lisa.
Okay.
I know we are talking a lot about, the donor relationship piece of this, and I know that's something that you're very passionate about through your own research and work. So please go ahead.
So right now there's most people think that there are the most recent research, which is about 2 years old now, that there are, well, I'm just going to play the little game with all of you who are listening. So think about how many millennials who are millionaires, as most of you probably know, are now about 40 years old at the top end. How many of them there are in the United States right now? And so most people guess, well, all over the place, but basically there's somewhere between 615 and 700,000, maybe more, millennial millionaires in the United States right now. And they are almost, other than what Mark and his company are doing with by saying, yes, we do cryptocurrency, they're almost ignored. And there was just an article out in the new Giving USA report, and it talked about Gen Z people who actually, when queried, asked that, which is the next level down in terms of age, they actually said that they would give more and more often if somebody just asked them, which is unbelievable. So you've got all of these nonprofits that are having a hard time raising money, and they're just knocking on the same door, the same people over and over again, saying, give me some more, because they know it. They don't have to learn a new language. They don't have to talk to them differently. They don't have to use the word, cyber or crypto or any of those kinds of things. And it's really a major problem in the sector, and it's not going to do us any good. And in fact, if you're a Gen Z or a Gen or a millennial person, and you decide that you want to give crypto, and you talk to an organization and they shut you down, and that you've just started to dip your toe in the water with giving, you might just say, oh, forget it. I'm just going to put all the money in a donor advised fund and I'm going to be done with it, or leave it to my cat or something like that, because this isn't worth the aggravation. And I encountered a very similar thing when we first had money, and I called a community foundation to start a donor advised fund. And I'd read a lot about them. And I, of course, sent over securities, because coming from business, I knew a little bit about the tax law and how that worked. And so I sent appreciated securities. And this is an organization that had been around for easily 50, 60 years. And they were totally confused about what they were supposed to do with those appreciated securities. And I couldn't believe it. And in fact, to the point where we had to actually, my wealth management firm and I had to set up an account for them and help them through the process. And that's maybe 10 years ago. The same thing is happening with crypto today. And oh, by the way, that same phone call of, hi, we want to give appreciated securities, can you just send me the form to do it? And then they say, I don't, got to talk to somebody. We've got to find out. We've got to get approval. That's still going on with people who want to put money in donor advised funds. And believe me, it's going on with people who want to donate crypto. So but for me, and I think what should be for the industry is, if somebody wants to give, let them give what they want to give, as long as it's not illegal, or they're not pushing you and saying you have to create some new program just for me, which I do not believe is correct. But whatever form you want to give, I wrote an article a long time ago. I have a blog that I write about every 2 weeks about accepting Diners Club, which is if any of you have heard that name, it's a very old, in fact, I think there's some new retro version of it, but an old credit card that people used to use for restaurants. But it's the point is that look at the whole array of how people can pay. And if they have that feeling and that desire that they want to give, it is to everybody in the sector's benefit, and it's actually our responsibility to let them give in the way that they want to give and make it really easy for them, as opposed to say yes but. So there shouldn't be a yes but. There should be really the way that I was so excited to see what Mark's doing, because the way that they're doing it, where they're just giving you a laundry list and saying, here, pick something, and I'm sure they have somewhere something that says, if what you want to give, your mechanism for giving isn't listed here, here's what you need to do. Something like that, and then they tell every.org what they're doing, and instantly that option shows up on the website. That's how I like to believe that it would happen. So I just think this is a critical piece of what's going on now, because there is so much money being left on the table every single minute of every single day. Then fundraisers are just not going after those people, because they're not what I wasn't 10 years ago, which is what I call on the list. We're not the regular donors, therefore we're ignored. therefore, again, if any of you've read my book, I tried to give a $2 million donation to our hospital, and it took 7 months for them to accept it from me because they didn't believe that I had the money, nor did they bother checking. All they checked to see was I on that list? So, Mark, what do you have to say about that?
That is crazy. First of all, if you have $2 million to donate to every.org, we'll accept it in a minute.
Thank you.
And I think it's so true that so many nonprofits, are not familiar with what to do. But in a weird way, it's kind of good because, like, I don't want your average nonprofit focusing on how do I accept all these different methods or how do I build the perfect conversion form. And so that's part of what we're trying to do with every.org, is making sure that nonprofits can stay focused entirely on their mission, not on how donors want to give, and not on, we're going to be adding Venmo probably next week to every.org. And then maybe next year it'll be, some new app that's very popular, right? And we're keeping track of that. And I don't want most nonprofit energy spent on that, right? So in a way, I think it's a very good thing that nonprofits are not spending the energy. We just need to figure out, how do we build out that infrastructure so that money is not being left on the table, like you're saying, because I totally agree that people can give more. For so long, GDP devoted to giving has been stuck at 2% in the U.S. There's nothing mathematical about that 2% number, right? There's no reason we can't have a future where it's at 3% or 5%, and where nonprofits have way more resources and can accomplish so much more. And I think an important part of that, when we were living in the society where it's like, Instagram's constantly telling me things to buy things, that, buy this, buy that to make you happy. And it's so easy. But in fact, we know that giving and making the world better actually does improve your happiness, your health, your sense of community. That's what we should all be doing more of. And so whatever we can do to lower those barriers, I think, is a good thing. But I do want to spend some time looking at the future of cryptocurrency and the blockchain. That is the title of this presentation, and looking at some of the bad things that are happening, right? We can't have our eyes closed, especially for every.org. For us, we are the ones accepting cryptocurrency directly, and if we accept laundered money or something, that could be very bad for us. So we keep close tabs on the regulations and on the bad things that are being done with cryptocurrency, in part so that our clients don't have to. I guess, Leah, is there anything we want to discuss before?
No, I think this is a great segue. I think one of the questions we often have, and I know I have to defend it myself in the role that I sit in, is why should we accept crypto? I think, right, you could talk about all the good things, but it takes one bad story about money laundering, or that this isn't sustainable, or we see the volatility of the crypto market. It said that it wasn't going to be susceptible to the same, financial pressures of the stock market, what have you. So I think you have all of these naysayers saying, I told you so, I told you this was going to happen. But I think, to Lisa's point, we also have a group of donors, I would say even beyond millennials, who are really focused on how can I make my maximum impact at your organization, and can I do it through a combined gift vehicle? Can I do it through crypto, what have you? So I think, I find myself in my role trying to have to bring an organization along through this journey. And so, Mark, what would you say, to people who are relatively naysayers? And Lisa, I'd love your perspective too, of saying, this is too volatile. The majority of this is money laundering, all of the things that I'm sure we hear, whether true or not. What is the actual truth when it comes to crypto philanthropy?
Mark, why don't you take that? I know you've got a bunch of current information.
Let me dive into a little bit into this report from the FTC on scammers and cryptocurrencies, because it is very, very, very real, right? So if we look at it, there's over $800 million in cryptocurrency fraud losses since January of 2018, and that peaked last year, and looking at Q1 of this year already, looking like this year might be even larger, although with the latest crash that could definitely change. And when you look at how people are being defrauded, the main category is investment related fraud. So essentially people saying, this is such a good investment, it's so safe, you put all of your money into this new random coin, and then it all goes kaput, right? And a recent really dramatic example of that was with Luna. So there was a cryptocurrency called Terra, or a blockchain called Terra, and its main new coin was called Luna. And then they you're using some clever financial mechanisms to create a stable coin that was backed by this Terra Luna, which was not at all stable. And they said that they were going to decrease the supply of Terra Luna if the price went down, but it ended up going down too far. And that stable coin lost its peg to the dollar, and they entered a death spiral where when one went down, the other one would go down. And now they're both at zero, and the project no longer exists. And I think, first of all, investors need to be, well informed that these, especially the newer coins, that it is a very risky investment, right? It's not something to put 100% or even 10% of your money in. And I think institutions and endowments need to be thinking about that as well, how much risk they're willing to take on. And then another thing that was interesting from the FTC report was the amount of scams happening on social media. And this is actually something that every.org has had to deal with, because random people will be messaging people on social media and saying like, hey, I work for every.org, you should donate your crypto, or you should give us some information and we'll help you. And then people come to our support center saying like, oh, I was contacted by this person, should I do this? And we're going, no, don't do it unless you're on www.every.org. And we've been reporting people to Facebook, to Twitter, and that definitely has seemed to help. And then the other thing that we've done is just be super responsive to customer support, right? Whenever someone messages us or emails us or visit support.every.org and they have one of these stories, we're careful to respond really quickly saying, don't do this, this is not us. And I think as a result, we've actually seen the number of people claiming to be us decline a lot, right? And I think the reason for that is that they're not having any success because we are so accessible to people. And then we quickly let people know that this was not us. So I think having that customer support has been really key versus some organizations, if there's no way to contact them and you just have this one person messaging you on Instagram claiming to be from them, you might start listening to what they have to say. Another big category in the FTC report was romance scams, which I hadn't heard a lot about before, but essentially some, gorgeous, smart person will slide into your DMs and start talking about something, completely different from cryptocurrency, but maybe they've seen you in the past posting a little bit of, and they know that you invest in crypto. And then after they formed a real connection with you, they might happen to mention that, they just invested in this fantastic thing, or maybe that they really need money for some emergency. And they're asking you for cryptocurrency. And the reason that they'll often choose cryptocurrency is because there's no trusted intermediaries. There's no way for you to get the money back, right? Once you send it to them, it can often be gone. So I think some things that kind of as individuals and as institutions we can do is try to improve the education and awareness around these scams. I think we also need to push for good KYC regulations, right? That people need to know kind of whether or not they're sending to a trusted wallet that has a lot of other transactions. And then finally, and I think the government is doing a much better job of this, people need to go after these scammers, right? And that's something where I think we've seen a lot of hope in that there have been a lot of high profile arrests and people who have gotten caught. And the reason for that is because it's all on this public decentralized ledger, right? All the information is out there in the public about these scams. people are getting better and better at tracking people down. So it's actually, if you look at as a percentage of activity, the total amount of fraud that's happening, it's actually going down every single year for cryptocurrency. And that's in part because people are realizing like, hey, if I'm going to do something illegal, I'd much rather have physical cash than be doing things on this Bitcoin public ledger.
Absolutely. No, I think, it's so easy to focus on the negative stories, the sensational examples when we're talking about crypto. I think, Lisa, you talked about this need to embrace technology, and you, in both your research as well as in your, giving history as a donor, I think it's important for us to listen to our donors when we're thinking about embracing this technology. So how have you talked about this in your own research and work, and what do you advise nonprofits to think about when they're thinking about accepting crypto?
Yeah, I think that nonprofits, first and foremost, need to focus on their mission. That's what they're about. That's what they should be doing. We want them to be sustainable. We want them to, and they should want themselves, and their boards want them to exist far into the future. And there is no reason for them to kind of jump into into technology because it feels like the next new shiny object. That is not a really smart thing to do. And I have heard people talking about, in fact, even with donor advised funds, which are pretty stable and streamlined, and people know what those are, and regulated as well. But people basically saying, they actually don't even know what a donor advised fund is. They don't, or they want to go play the market with the donor advised fund. I have had people where I've given money, and I usually ask, if I'm giving appreciated securities, what do you intend to do with that? Do you intend to, this is not directly to a nonprofit, this is to an intermediary or donor advised fund. And sometimes they do say, well, we're going to kind of wait and see what happens. Maybe we can make some big money here. And I want to recommend strongly against that. I think that fundraisers' jobs and people who run nonprofits, jobs are plenty hard. Thank you very much. But leave that up to the experts, leave that up to somebody else. And I do think that there might be pressure from boards saying, yeah, but if we went back 4 months, I guess, in crypto, people saying, oh my God, this is the big thing. This is incredible. We have to do that. Why? And I am certain that there's people listening on this call who've had boards or people that they've talked to or say, why aren't you doing more with crypto? And it's fine as long as you put that in the category of one of the myriad things that you can use to send funds or resources to a nonprofit. And as long as you put it in that category, you're fine. But if you start getting into, well, maybe I kind of always want to be a stockbroker on the side. Maybe I'm going to now do that. That is not what I as a donor want the CFO of the nonprofit I'm putting money into. I don't want them doing that. It might sound kind of fun if it works, but this sort of gambling with donors' money, it kind of is horrifying to me as a donor. And it's also should be really scary to anybody who is part of a nonprofit, that there is that there is that desire on the part of some people to do that. And I think it's a lot of, eye on the prize, focus on your mission, focus on your organization, and really, and then if somebody gives you something, crypto or otherwise, if they give you real estate, if they give you something else they want to give you and you're not sure how to use that, then find somebody who's an expert like Mark's company or others that can make that happen for you. They charge you a fee or they charge you whatever they do to turn that into cash so that you don't have to deal with it. And the worst possible thing is that somebody dangles this in front of you, creates a whole bunch of requirements for you that get you off mission, make you crazy because it's a big number. And oh my God, I don't want to not have that number. And then when the person says yes, and you're waiting for all this processing to go through, and crypto has really a double round of processing that has to happen with it that can be very, very costly. And you've got a fundraiser saying, wait a second, we need to fund this particular program or this particular project or complete a capital campaign. And here's this money being dangled in front of us. And all of a sudden you realize it's not real, it's not there. And that fundraiser and the organization have then wasted a ridiculous amount of time and energy and resources, besides the fact that it's just depressing. So I want to caution everybody to just stay away from doing that. Like the experts do their thing. Here this is, if you can convert this into money, great. The only exception I would say is actual real estate. If you happen to be, I have a friend who runs a homeless organization. If it's real estate that they can actually use, then yes, you're going to find an attorney and figure out how to make that work. And that might be one of the very, small exceptions in terms of not having it turned into cash. But you still would want to have a professional do it. You would not want to be making that up on your own. So I think that's very, very important. And the idea of another thing that I want to caution is that I think a lot of nonprofits, and again, I see this also coming from boards, so people at all different levels at a nonprofit, see this as the easy way of talking to younger people. And like Mark said, it's not all younger people, but there are a lot of them. I think the percentage is, double the people under 40 than people over 40, I think, who are using crypto. But if you say, well, gee, I don't want to learn the new language of millennials and Gen Z people because it's just too hard and they want things differently and they don't want to have the 3-hour lunches with me and they don't want to talk on the telephone and they don't want to do all this. And then they think, oh, we'll just say crypto and all of them will come running towards us and it's all going to be okay. And I think that is offensive to younger people and making it seem like, well, you just sort of say this fun new shiny word and everybody's going to come running. And that is not a shortcut to being able to interact with younger donors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think some of the points you raised, in thinking about crypto, and Mark, you might have comments, and Lisa as well, is, what advice do you have to organizations? And Mark, you must advise clients, and Lisa, you must, think about this in your research on how you're crafting gift policies as an organization that are really clear about the types of giving vehicles that you accept within crypto. And I know there's a lot of questions and conversations about, are there types of crypto we should accept? Are there types we shouldn't? Should we not allow anonymous donations? Like, how do we as a nonprofit protect ourselves as well through these gift policies? Mark, do you have any comments or thoughts there?
Yeah, well, and before I answer that question, I wanted to back up a little bit to what Lisa was saying, which was really good, is stay on mission, right? Accept resources for your mission, liquidate them, and then stay on your mission. And in the case of a housing nonprofit, then real estate might be really useful for your mission. We're actually working with one of the world's largest humanitarian aid organizations. It's not announced yet, but on how they can actually do cash disbursements to refugees using crypto technology. So in that case, it is part of their mission, right? It is part of their mission to help people who are highly mobile, who have had to flee their homes with something that they'll be able to take with them around the world, wherever they end up. And that is a very good use for cryptocurrency, because in almost any country, not China, but you'll be able to sell that Bitcoin, right? And you'll be able to get local currency that you can use, or better yet, and what we're advising them to do is to actually use a stable coin. So USDC is the largest stable coin. It always is worth $1, and unlike some of the other stable coins out there, it's fully backed 1-to-1 and audited on a monthly basis by third-party auditors, and it exists on many different blockchains, whether that's Ethereum or Stellar or Solana. So absolutely, cryptocurrency can, for some organizations, for a small number of organizations, be very critical to how they accomplish their mission, and be super helpful. But yeah, for the majority of organizations, it's all about stay on mission. And the point of accepting crypto donations is so that you can convert that to US dollars and continue with your mission. So I guess that brings up your next question, which is, how do you accept those crypto dollars? How do you form your gift acceptance policy? And our advice for most nonprofits is use an intermediary so that you're not at risk. You can ask someone to put it into their own donor advised fund and have them liquidate it, which they might have already been doing without you even realizing it. It's possible that you've gotten support from crypto donors, but they liquidated it through a donor advised fund before sending you a US dollar grant. Or you can use every.org or another legal intermediary to accept it on your behalf. And then we're the ones figuring out what cryptocurrencies should we accept, and do we allow people to hold it at all? And so, like you mentioned, different cryptos having different properties. Like, I think one kind of worrying trend is we're seeing that these ransomware viruses, right, where a virus will come onto your computer, and suddenly all your files will be gone unless you pay someone in Bitcoin, is what it used to be. And then people started getting caught because Bitcoin is very trackable, not always easy to fence, depending on what country you live in. So then some of them have started switching to Monero, which is a privacy-centric coin that's much more difficult to track, right? And those are difficult questions to grapple with from a technology standpoint, because like I absolutely believe in an individual's right to privacy, but not in anyone's right to commit crimes, right? And so I don't know how it's all going to shake out. And I guess on the opposite side of things, where you have no privacy, China just is launching their e-yuan. Over 263 million people in China now have their e-yuan wallet. It's a completely centralized digital currency. I don't know that it'd even be right to call it a cryptocurrency, because it's not using any decentralized blockchain technology, although it is using some cryptography. But they're going to probably one day outlaw cash, and they're going to know every single time someone buys some milk, right? Which it could be very useful in some respects, right? Like, most people agree now that the Fed probably should have raised interest rates earlier. Maybe if they had better real-time economic data, they would have made better decisions. But can it be used by a totalitarian regime to further oppress minorities? Absolutely. So there's a lot of challenges there. But they aren't necessarily something that every nonprofit has to think about, right? You can just say, hey, we'll set up an intermediary, and that intermediary can accept crypto on our behalf, and then send US dollars onwards to us.
And I just wanted to add that I think those discussions need to happen now. Before somebody approaches you with crypto. I think it's from a donor perspective, it's going to be much more impressive if it's what I've seen a lot of organizations do is they say we accept it, figuring I'll just figure that out down the line. It's okay. And then when a donor calls and says, I want to do this, they're, oh, well, I've got to get back to you. I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I think that there should be a policy in place. I think that there should be a mechanism in place and a decision based on that organization of what are you going to do when somebody wants to pay in crypto, so that it's that upfront, so that the minute somebody asks you, and if they never ask you, okay, great, that's fine. Then you did some homework that you didn't need to do. But most people eventually will be asked about this. And I think that now is the time to figure out how are you going to deal with it, find out who the partners are, who are you going to use as an intermediary, and really even go through a faux version of the process so that exactly you and a couple of other people at the organization who might be accepting money are well aware of what is that process. Because again, as a donor, I don't want to say, okay, I thought about it, I followed you, I now want to give you this money, and then someone puts on the brakes and says, no, you can't do that. Or because we're not sure how to put it together. It just doesn't make it doesn't make the organization look so good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, the big selling point when I even went to my own organization to have this conversation was very much your premise, Lisa. Giving should be easy, regardless if it's on a credit card, through a DAF, through crypto. Giving should be easy for a donor. It shouldn't be more struggle on their end to have to make a gift to any organization for a charitable purpose. We really need to maximize how easy it is for them. So let's talk about the trends of the last 4 months, the trends of the last week. It's very volatile. We definitely saw the heyday of crypto in the fall of 2021. We've now entered 2022. We were told this marketplace wouldn't be susceptible to, financial downturns and things that the stock market was experiencing, and here we are. So what are your thoughts about where crypto is today? I think a lot of organizations maybe are putting brakes on conversations about accepting this vehicle. Maybe some don't know what the future holds. Is this still viable? Are people still investing? Are people still using this? Have you seen donations slow? Are you hearing less chatter about this? Would love both of your perspectives here.
So on every.org, I can say that we absolutely have seen a huge slowdown in crypto donations. We've seen about half the number of donations over the last 2 months compared to previous. And we've seen under 1/10 of the volume. So especially the larger donations, those have really dried up. Meanwhile, bank donations, credit card donations, donor advised fund donations, those have all been unaffected by this latest market downturn. And I think that goes to highlight the importance of being ready actually to accept a wide variety of donations, because you don't know, you don't know 6 months, 12 months, 6 years from now what things are going to look like, but you should be ready. So I think that was a great point. And the other thing I'll say, just for anyone who's like, oh, crypto's done, I don't have to worry about it. Here's a graph. It doesn't even have the latest one, but this is of Bitcoin's 15 historical corrections, now 16, in the brief 10 years since the first one in January 12th of 2012, when it went from $7 to $4. And so in this context, the latest correction is actually nothing new. I think the most recent drop was around 60 or 70% for Bitcoin. That is large, but by no means the largest that Bitcoin has seen. So I do think that it will continue to be volatile. And I think that now is actually the perfect time to make sure that you're ready in the future. I will say that now maybe is not a great time to spend a lot of money on it. And that is one area where every.org is unique in that, we are a nonprofit ourselves. So we're funded by philanthropists like the Gates Foundation. So it's actually no cost for you to add that donate crypto button to your website. And then it's not until anyone actually makes a crypto donation that there will be a fee. And the only fee is that third-party brokerage fee. It's a Coinbase fee of 1% that they take when we convert it to US dollars. So there's absolutely no reason not to get started today. And we've actually had people in exactly what Lisa described. We had one who actually, a donor wanted to donate $1 million to them, and they didn't know how to accept crypto, but we were able to get them up and running within a day. It actually just takes 2 minutes. If you go to every.org/crypto, it's that easy. And part of the reason for it is because the legal agreement, again, is actually between the donor and between every.org. And then we're just sending a US dollar grant onwards to the nonprofit. And that's why it's so much easier than doing it yourself or using a for-profit provider that does not have a legal intermediary, because then you'll have to update your accounting practices. You'll have to update your gift acceptance policy. You'll have to update how you file your 990. You'll have to file Form 8282 for the donors. There's all these things, and these things can be changing rapidly, right? There's a bill in Congress right now saying that cryptocurrencies should be treated as a commodity. The kind of US standard gap practices is not currently to treat them as a commodity. So these things are going to continue changing, and they should not be a distraction for your mission. But at the same time, you should be ready to accept that support.
Yeah, I just want to also add, in terms of being ready for it, which I think we've both talked about a lot, being ready for people to and set up in a process where it's, oh yes, it's that we know what to do in this situation. While you're doing that, just a suggestion for everybody listening, that anonymity thing is also a piece to talk about. People need to, and that is rapidly changing. It doesn't have anything to do with crypto per se. It has to do with all the different vehicles. But when somebody comes to you and wants to give you a bunch of money, and they want it to be completely anonymous, or they do send you money and you don't know who it's coming from, we've now seen over and over again lots of that kind of stuff going awry, where people are wanting to do that not because they don't want to get a lot of solicitations, but because there's something fishy about the money that they don't want people to know. So I think that it's not a fun conversation to have, but I think it's a critical conversation to have with your board and with your organization to know, like, okay, let's do examples of where's our line, basically, where's our red line here, and know that in advance. And if you have that plus the mechanism figured out for processing it, then you're golden.
Yeah. And speaking about the line, something I hear a lot of chatter about all of the time is this idea around sustainability and the impact on climate change that cryptocurrency and the blockchain has, right? And I think there's a lot of myths out there in particular about this, that transactions directly cause energy usage. And if we have a sustainability pledge or commitment, or we're a environmental nonprofit, how can we ever validate taking crypto? So how do you think through sort of demystifying some of these things and what's actually true when it comes to sustainability and crypto, and even the blockchain?
Fantastic question. And this is something where I've seen, I think, more misunderstandings than any other area. And part of that is because there's a lot of motivated reasoning happening. There's a lot of people who have a lot of Bitcoin and want to pretend that there's no issue. Let me tell you that there is an issue. It is using a lot of energy, but it is important to understand why and how. And so specifically what you said, do transactions cause that energy usage? Because a lot of times people will look at the total energy of consumption of Bitcoin, which is enormous. It's larger than a country like Argentina. Although it has been going down recently because the price has been going down, but it's still very large. And they'll divide it by the current number of transactions happening, and they'll say, oh, one Bitcoin transaction costs this much money. But that's not why people are plugging in these computers. The transaction rewards account for only about 2% of the rewards that people get from mining Bitcoin. The vast majority of it is actually from mining these new coins, right? So new Bitcoins are currently being created and will continue to be created until about the year 2140. So it's not a process that is going away anytime soon, although the Bitcoin mining reward does half every 4 years. And their motivation to mine those is directly correlated to the price. So let me bring up here. Here's the price of Bitcoin. This is on coinmarketcap.com. There's many other places that you can go and look this up. And then here's the total energy consumption of Bitcoin, which cannot be precisely measured, but the University of Cambridge has gotten very good at doing an estimate. And you'll see that there's a very high correlation between these two graphs, although the energy consumption is slightly delayed. And the reason for this is if Bitcoin price starts going up and up and up, then miners say, wow, I'm making a huge profit on this. I need to do more of this, right? I need to buy more mining rigs. I need to plug in more machines so that I can make even more money, right? And then conversely, if there's a crash and the price of Bitcoin goes down, then miners are saying, hey, wait a second, this was my electricity bill last month. This is how many Bitcoin I got. This is how much it's worth. Maybe I shouldn't be doing so much of this, right? And people who are doing it less efficiently or in regions with more expensive electricity will turn off those machines. And so that's why you'll often see kind of after a really big crash, then like a month later, you'll see the hash rate decrease and the energy consumption of Bitcoin go down a little bit. But there's still, many other, I would say, excuses that people in cryptocurrency make. So yeah, what else have you heard?
Well, I think the other question, if I can just ask one small follow-up, is there a green way to give crypto? I've seen some gift policies where it says we will accept the most sustainable crypto. Like, does that exist? We've heard, different places saying we're going to invest in making our Bitcoin more sustainable. Like, does that actually exist? Is that possible?
So Bitcoin today, as long as it is proof of work, it is going to be very difficult to make it sustainable. One way, of course, is to use green energy sources, right? And estimates on the total percentage of Bitcoin mining that's done using sustainable energy range from 45% to 75%. It's very difficult to actually know. But I would say that, today in the world, we in general need more green energy, right? And it's, I think, even if I'm, using green energy to power my mining, is that actually surplus green energy, right? Is that actually energy that nothing else could have been done with it? And I think chances are no. Chances are, maybe if it's near a hydroelectric dam, maybe instead of building a Bitcoin mining rig there, you could have built a factory there, right? You could have done something and use that energy in a more productive manner. So I don't buy, maybe eventually, right? Maybe we'll have, fusion nuclear plants or something, and we'll truly have way more energy than we need. But I don't buy that mining is all done using excess sustainable energy. Although that would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's one of the challenges moving forward. So some people will say, what about gold? What about banking? You know, they're even worse for the environment. How do you respond to those sorts of questions and statements?
Yeah, so I mean they are right? Like if you were to add up all of the cost of the banking industry and all the people who are flying around to different conferences and driving their car into these giant office buildings and all of that, you know, the banking industry does use more energy, but I think it's a false equivalency because you're comparing an entire industry to a protocol, right? And so you should be comparing it to like ACH, in which case it doesn't win. And the reality is that even if you know cryptocurrency were to totally take over, that doesn't mean that no one would drive into office buildings, right? There would still be companies, there would still be people going to conferences. In fact, there are a lot of cryptocurrency conferences, and I would say that should kind of be considered in another category. And then, you know, we should aim to make it better, right? We should aim for blockchain technology to do much better than these previous industries. And the good news is that there are coins that are doing much better. So there are a lot of blockchains that are moving from proof of work to proof of stake. And Ethereum, the second largest one, is expected to do that hopefully sometime soon. And they think that will actually increase the security moving to these newer protocols, and it will definitely increase the performance. It can do, you know, way more transactions a second. And so now if you look at a lot of the top cryptocurrencies, the ones that aren't just forks of Bitcoin, now if you look at Solana or Cardano, they're all, you know, way higher throughput, and way, like we're talking 99.9+% lower energy consumption. And so that's what we should be, you know, encouraging usage of as much as possible. That's the advice that we gave to the humanitarian org that was interested in actually distributing cryptocurrency to people. And so then you mentioned, you know, how can we ethically accept it? That's a very different question in my mind than ethically using it or investing in it, right? Because the greenest thing you can do for Bitcoin is sell it, right? That is the best thing to do, is to divest from Bitcoin. And that's what I would encourage all these endowments. You know, I know Yale, Harvard, Stanford, MIT, all of their endowments have invested in cryptocurrency. I haven't heard anything about their kind of ESG policies around that, and whether they're thinking about the environmental impact. So if, you know, anyone who's involved in investing in cryptocurrencies and cares about the environment, I think you should think very carefully before you buy or hold Bitcoin. Or any proof of work currency that doesn't show signs of changing. Because again, that's, you know, the more people that buy it, the higher the price is going to go. And then the more miners are going to go, wait, I'm making huge profits, time for me to plug in more machines. And conversely, if we can get the message out of divest from Bitcoin, divest from proof of work currencies, or donate it to a nonprofit that's going to sell it for you, right? Then I think the better chance we have of these newer, more environmentally friendly protocols taking over.
Thank you. And just a reminder to everyone, please do use the Q&A feature. I think we had a question about this topic, so I'm glad that we could answer that. But please do, we encourage you to use the question and answer if you have questions for our panelists. So Lisa, you're sitting here as a donor, you're sitting here as sort of an expert in philanthropy. What organizations are doing this the best? Like, you've had interactions with organizations, or what advice are you giving to organizations overall when it comes to accepting cryptocurrency otherwise? Oh, you're just on mute.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I really haven't been hearing that much about it. I think people have been talking about it, but not actually doing anything with it. And I understand that large universities with these giant endowments are doing that, but sort of like, I don't know, your average, let's call it maybe even a non-university, non-medical center organization is they're talking about it. And I think there's some fear. I think there's some excitement. And I think that we need to, those of us who are talking about it and can kind of see the various different angles of it, need to kind of create a standard. And I think that standard should be you give it to an expert and turn it into money. You don't play with that as a market. You don't use it as an investment vehicle. And I hope that organizations after the last few months have realized that I guess if you want to use it as an investment vehicle and you as part of your endowment and you have your investment statement and team and whatever, and you want to say, okay, these are here in my portfolio, I'm going to have this small percentage of Bitcoin just in case, then I suppose that's okay. But that's far removed from the daily operations of a nonprofit. So that endowment money is really a different kind of thing. Having said that, there are, I did hear from a university recently that they were very concerned because of the market downturn. They were concerned that they had regular scholarship programs that had to end. And they had to actually go to donors and say, we know that your endowment is supposed to pay for a scholarship every year. That is not going to happen this next year. We don't know what's going to happen going forward. I can't imagine that's a conversation that anybody wants to have with a donor. It's awful and it's disturbing. And then if that person, like someone comes to me with that and says that, and then I find out that they've put a whole bunch of money into an unusual percentage of their portfolio was in cryptocurrency because that took a dive more than other things. I would not be super excited about giving them more money and supporting them. So it's not just that particular one instance and one event. It's the overall mindset of, oh, this is, because I can see somebody saying, or a big donor saying, oh, that's how you deal with my money. That's how, because now we're, why didn't you invest it in something where we didn't have to have this conversation where some poor kid isn't getting a scholarship?
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that. I still see a lot of people saying, let's put it down. And I use the analogy of the companies that say, we'll sell your car. We want your old car. And this happened for years and years and years. Everybody had on their website in the early days, you can pay cash or a credit card or a car. And so I just decided to be silly about it. And I asked a number of people, I said, hey, if I really do give you my car, how does that work? And, and some of them I did from the inside where I was on the board or whatever, and nobody knew. They were like, well, there's this company we give it to. What do they charge? I don't know. It was set up in a very, like, we just want to have it on our website just in case. Well, the just in case is fine, but it's not fine if you're not educated about it and informed about how exactly you're going to do it, because then you just sound like you're pandering and that you think your donors are kind of dumb, and no donor wants to hear that.
Yeah, it's not a marketing technique. I think sometimes people think of it as that. And you were saying earlier that it's going to attract people. It's going to be buzzy. It's going to catch. There's a question that was posed in the chat. How is proof of stake more secure when presumably the golden standard of security is proof of work? And I can't pretend to understand the details of this. So I don't know if anyone has feedback there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Vitalik Buterin has an entire blog post about this and why Ethereum is moving to proof of stake if you really want to dive into it. But essentially what you want to prevent happening is to have like one entity able to take over the blockchain and decide which transactions get in, which transactions don't. What's called a 51% attack, where they essentially control the majority of mind share and deciding what goes in and what gets out, right? And what you can do is actually calculate how expensive would a 51% attack be. And so, for instance, today, if an entity like the United States wanted to do a 51% attack on Bitcoin, they would need to buy a lot of mining rigs and waste a lot of electricity and take over that network. The United States absolutely could do that. Probably Amazon could actually afford to do that. So it is possible. It's just very, very expensive. When you look at proof of stake, in order to do a 51% attack, you would actually have to own 51% of that currency. And that's where the expense just gets astronomical, assuming that this is a somewhat mature currency that is well distributed, because you'd essentially have to convince over half of the current owners to sell it to you, right? So you'd have to kind of corner the market. And people have tried to corner the market on silver in the past or various things. It is difficult to do, and it is really expensive because what happens is, you get, the first 10%, or in the case of Ethereum, probably the first 1% of people to say, okay, I'll sell it to you, right? But then the more that you try to get it, the higher the price is going to go. So it just becomes really prohibitive to try to buy that much of the currency. And then at that point, what would you be doing to yourself? You'd have spent an enormous amount of money, and now you'd have an enormous amount of Ethereum, and then you'd shoot yourself in the foot by doing this attack. It doesn't quite make sense. Versus proof of work, you really can kind of brute force it.
Well, thank you. That was very informative, Mark. So as we're thinking about future of crypto philanthropy, are there any other ideas or any other trends that you think we should be looking at? I know we talked about a lot this evening about, regulations and, future outlook and what have you, but anything else you think is important when it comes to this topic?
So one thing I did read about recently was an organization, a nonprofit, very stable, well-known nonprofit, who said, we want to get into crypto, we want to start doing this. And so they actually created a marketing, and like you just said, it's not really about marketing, but they created a marketing campaign saying, yay, crypto, we can take crypto now, come to us, which really is, I guess there's a small part of it that might encourage somebody to give, but it also is suggesting that somebody is only going to give to offload their crypto. It takes away the whole meaning and the reason and the joy that people get out of giving if you answer. So they did this big marketing campaign, and they said that they, after about a month, I guess, of direct mail and stuff on their website and everything, they'd made like $600. So they're like, well, that didn't work. And then somebody comes forward and says, do you know this story, Mark? I feel like you've heard this one now. That somebody comes forward and gives them an NFT and says, guess what? Here's this, you're going to sell it and make a boatload of money. And they did. And so because of that situation, they now believe that, oh, well, let's just do more of that then, which is not the right answer. It's like you can always have some win the lottery or something like that, but that was not the right answer. And to think that you can easily replicate that is really like gambling. So I think people need to be cautious of that.
Yeah, we've had major questions, as you can imagine, as an art museum, asking our stance on NFTs, related to crypto. And that could be a whole nother panel and session that we possibly can't unpack fully tonight. But I mean, it's they go hand in hand in a lot of conversations. They're very different and independent as well. So there's a question posed, and Mark, I'm going to throw this to you because it's about every.org. How does the process work? Say a nonprofit wants to start working with every.org. How does that happen? Is it a simple phone call? How are you choosing the nonprofits that you're working with? You talked about this new humanitarian organization. How does that process work?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're welcome to email me, mark@every.org. But the standard process is someone goes to our website, they click on for nonprofits, and then they click on crypto, and they'll end up at every.org/crypto. So you can go open this page up on your own phone right now, every.org/crypto. And you're welcome to schedule a demo with our partnerships lead, Francesca. She leads these amazing demos every single week. She's much better at walking through it than I am. You can also instantly jump into it, and actually, right, like in minutes, you can actually get a crypto button for your website. It's very different from most solutions, in part because we're a nonprofit ourselves, so we're not so focused on a long sales cycle and getting you to pay much money. We can just let you do it yourself right away. And then how it works is that we use Coinbase, they're the largest US cryptocurrency exchange, to receive cryptocurrency donations of Bitcoin, Ethereum, or USD coin. And we're going to be expanding that soon. And even today, if you have a donation in a different cryptocurrency worth $5,000 or more, donors can just email crypto@every.org, get an address for that. And through that process, we support thousands and thousands of tokens and coins because we have accounts on 4 different exchanges and OpenSea. We also support NFTs. And then we're the ones who actually send donors a tax-deductible receipt. We handle all of the compliance issues. We file Form 8282 with the IRS. We have kind of hit our books, not hit the nonprofits books. And Coinbase charges a flat 1% fee and instantly converts that crypto. So the moment it happens, that conversion happens. So let me actually go back to an example nonprofit that uses us. MAPS has also been very successful fundraising with NFTs, and they've really kind of engaged the cryptocurrency community. I would say they actually go to cryptocurrency conferences, but I think, like Lisa said, that's like a strategy that works for a very small number of nonprofits. For most people, it's best to just be prepared to accept it. And so I have to enter in my name and email. Every.org does not accept anonymous cryptocurrency donations. We run everyone through our partner OFAC API to check all these different lists. For a larger donation, we then do additional due diligence ourselves manually. And so I'll say, okay, my name is Mark Ulrich, and I give them a garbage email. And then by default, I'm going to share with MAPS that I contributed. People can choose to uncheck this. So for those more privacy conscious cryptocurrency donors, they can uncheck that, and your organization might not know who originated the gift, but we're still doing the due diligence and making sure that there's no malfeasance going on. And then donate with crypto. And this is where the Coinbase modal pops up. So people can select, oh, I want Bitcoin, I want to donate USDC coin. And then if they have their mobile wallet, they'll scan that QR code. If they're using their computer, then they'll copy in this address, and they can very easily send that. And then as soon as someone were to send that, this would instantly update on Coinbase's side. And then once they exit out, they would get that receipt from every.org, and the receipt's going to say, exactly how much Bitcoin or how much Ethereum they donated, and then Coinbase instantly sells it for us. So we actually don't need to do anything for that to be liquidated, and that will always be the case for any proof of work currency. We're always going to sell it instantly. Down the line, we may have the option to hold certain like proof of stake, environmentally friendly cryptocurrencies if people want to do that. Although again, like Lisa said, it should be part of a larger strategy of, what are my investments? Where do I want to allocate it? Personally, every.org, does not have that much money, does not have an endowment. So we're not dealing with that. But yeah, if I had a large endowment and I was investing it, probably would make sense for a small percentage of it to be in cryptocurrency. And I would want those cryptocurrencies to all be environmentally friendly, right? I would not invest in Bitcoin. And so then after that, after we have the US dollars, if you've signed up, right, presumably you're going to sign up, then we send you money on a weekly basis through our payments provider Stripe. So we'll send you that US dollar grant. If you haven't signed up, so if the agreement was just between the donor and every.org, then we actually work with a partner called Network for Good, same partner that Facebook Fundraisers uses, and they will, worst case scenario, send you a physical check. So if you really don't want to do anything, you don't even want to tell us your routing and account number, we'll still figure out a way to get that grant to you.
Great. Thank you for walking us through that, Mark. That was really informational. We appreciate it. Any final thoughts tonight before we wrap up? This has been so illuminating, having both of you here talking about crypto. An hour is never enough time, but I think we've covered a lot of topics. Anything final that we might want to raise before we end?
Well, I guess I've got a question. So I know you're a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that you don't make money. So do you make money, or is this all completely for the good of the world?
So we solicit donations from a lot of people, and so the big names are like Gates Foundation, Camp.org, but we've also gotten a lot of donations from smaller donors, and we do ask people who have benefited from the site to also donate to us. But it's very different from taking a cut, right? So it's always after you've made a donation to an organization, then we might follow up with you, say more about every.org, and that's also only for people who actually sign up. So it's like after you make your donation, we say, hey, you can sign up for every.org and manage all of your giving in one place. And then, yeah, we'll definitely tell them what it is that we're doing and why we believe it's important for this infrastructure to exist. And we believe it's important for this infrastructure to be free because we don't think that nonprofits should be gated out of doing something like accepting cryptocurrency or spending a lot of money on doing something like accepting cryptocurrency.
And if somebody, you've liquidated the cryptocurrency, you don't have a mechanism at every.org like a donor advised fund would to hold that money till they decide where they want that to go on to. It all happens at once, right?
It's all instantly liquidated. And yeah, we will never, ever be holding proof of work currencies like Bitcoin. We may one day hold some of the more environmentally friendly ones.
Amazing. Well, this was so fascinating. Thank you both for sharing your insights, your expertise, and thank you to everyone who joined this evening as a participant, as well as those who will be watching this eventually as a recording. On behalf of the Nonprofit Management Program at Columbia's School of Professional Studies, we thank you for joining the third of our three-part series on cryptocurrency and giving today, and wish you all a wonderful evening, morning, night, wherever you are. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Mark. We truly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. This was a pleasure.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.